This is just one of many examples of some tubs that are available. This one happens to be, I think, a 225 pound or 250 pound tub. Very dense product, as you can see. It's extremely hard. This would be one of the cooked tubs. There's several different formulations. There's cooked in a way of providing hardness in the cooking process, manufacturing process. Some have a chemical hardener that hardens those tubs as well. So again, it's the hardness of the product. As you can imagine, cattle come up here and actually have to lick that. They can't bite it with their tongue, with their teeth, so they just have to lick that product. So the hardness of that product is really what regulates the intake. And as we talked about earlier, there's a label there that gives you, just like Dr. Gill described in another segment, it gives you the nutrient breakdown much like a feed tag on a bag. This is a 3013 particular tub, and as you see, much like was described on the bagged feeds, the label here, again by law, will have all these different specifications. It starts out with crude protein. This one happens to be a 30% protein. Another thing that you'll notice is this says this includes not more than 13% equivalent from non-protein nitrogen. Oftentimes these tubs may have higher levels of non-protein nitrogen than maybe some of the textured feeds or pelleted feeds that we discussed earlier. And again, nothing wrong with that. Ruminants can make very efficient use of that, especially when the diet, the forage in the diet may be less than or equal to 7% crude protein. This one talks about crude fat. You'll notice that it's about, this one's formulated to be at least 5% crude fat. Dr. Gill talked about the normal fat levels in cubes or textured diets is going to be in the 2 to 3% range. Another benefit of the tubs is they allow us the opportunity to add higher fat levels. And again, fat is a very dense source of energy. Fat contains 2.25 times more energy per unit, per pound or whatever unit you want to use, 2.25 times more energy than a carbohydrate energy source. So we can add some additional fat to these products, and that's a great thing as well. Most of these tubs are going to be relatively low in fiber. You'll notice this one says 2.5% crude fiber. So again, it's a very energy dense, nutrient dense source. The fiber levels are going to be quite low. And you see the rest of those ingredients there, the mineral specifications, the amount of salt, the trace minerals that are in there, potassium, magnesium, copper, zinc. You can read the rest of those. Much like a feed tag, it's going to have some ingredient specifications. Again, those are going to be very broad. They're well-defined categories, if you will, but it's not going to specify actual ingredients. Like this one has molasses products, hydrolyzed feather meal, processed grain byproducts. So again, that just gives the manufacturer some flexibility to work within those ingredient categories to formulate an excellent supplement. One thing I might point out here, this has hydrolyzed feather meal. And oftentimes producers, beef cattle producers, when they see feather meal, they think inferior quality product. And that's certainly not the case here. When we hydrolyze feather meal, we produce a very protein-dense feed ingredient. Feather meal will run somewhere in the neighborhood of about 80% crude protein. Not very palatable, certainly not a standalone supplement, not a standalone protein supplement. The unique thing about feather meal is that protein escapes digestion by the bacteria in the rumen. And it'll be digested in the abomasum, or the true stomach, if you will, low pH, and then those amino acids will be absorbed in the small intestine. So a very effective source of protein if used in combination with some natural sources of protein. And again, as we talked about feeding directions over here, it'll talk about tub placement. It'll talk about how many tubs per a given number of cattle, and again, the all-important, the amount of tub that you would expect, that the manufacturer expects those cattle to eat. So labels very important on tubs, just like we talked about for bagged feeds.